Back in 2020, the entire aviation world was basically holding its breath. There was this single, high-stakes decision on the table that wasn't just about one company's future. No, it was about redrawing the entire map of global aerospace for years to come. All right, let's get right into this incredible story.
At the end of the day, it all boiled down to this one incredibly tough question for Rolls-Royce. One of the most legendary engine makers on the planet. They were in deep financial trouble, and the choice they had to make couldn't have been more stark.
And, well, they made a choice, a really clear one. And that one decision basically split the future of aviation right down the middle. It set Rolls-Royce on one path, and it kicked off a technological revolution in China that's now challenging the very top of the industry.
So, how did this all happen? Let's rewind a bit, back to the moment of conflict, where you have this world-famous company on the brink of disaster, and an emerging superpower comes along with an offer that came with one huge string attached.
Okay, picture this. It's 2020. The pandemic has shut down travel, and Rolls-Royce, a company that literally makes money based on how many hours their engines are flying, is just bleeding cash. We're talking billions in losses. At the exact same time, China's ambitious C919 jet project is hitting a wall. It needs a top-tier engine to have any chance of competing. So they make Rolls-Royce an offer they can't refuse, or so they thought. A massive multi-billion-dollar lifeline. But, and this is a big but, there was a catch. China didn't just want to buy the engines. They wanted Rolls-Royce to build a factory in China, which, okay, maybe that's negotiable. But the deal breaker, the absolute red line, was the demand for technology transfer. They wanted the keys to the kingdom, the secret sauce behind the engine's most advanced components.
For Rolls-Royce, that was just no way. Unthinkable. So this brings us to their big strategic decision: to protect their tech, what they call their crown jewels, no matter the cost. They basically went into defense mode, turning the company into a technological fortress.
And they weren't quiet about it either. The leadership came out and said this, pretty much word for word. I mean, wow, that tells you everything you need to know, right? To them, the technology was literally more important than the immediate survival of the company. But taking a stand like that, it had a painful, immediate cost.
After walking away from the deal, Rolls-Royce had to announce it was laying off 9,000 people. 9,000. That's almost a fifth of their entire global workforce. It was a shocking number that really shows you the kind of financial pressure they were under and the very real human price of choosing to protect a secret over signing a massive check.
So you're probably asking, why? Why make such a painful choice? Well, it really boiled down to a few key things. First, as we said, protecting those crown jewels. Second, they were playing the long game. They wanted to keep their tech monopoly and, frankly, not help create a future competitor that could one day put them out of business. And finally, this wasn't just business. It was tangled up in global politics and huge pressure from international export controls.
Okay, so that's the Rolls-Royce side. But what about China? Did they just pack up and go home? Not even close. In fact, that rejection lit a huge fire under their own homegrown engine program. It forced them down a new path toward complete self-reliance. And that fire has a name, the CJ1000AX. Now, this project was already in the works, but that rejection in 2020, man, that just kicked it into hyperdrive. And as you can see from this timeline, the progress they made was systematic and incredibly fast. Just a few years later, they had a domestically built engine ready to fly on their own jet.
And, this really gets to the heart of their bigger ambition. This was never just about building one engine. The goal was to master the entire industrial chain. We're talking about controlling everything, from mining the metals out of the ground, to designing the software, to bolting the finished product onto a wing. It was basically a declaration of technological independence.
All right, so let's fast forward a few years. After that massive decision, where are we now? Let's bring these two stories back together and see what happened to both sides.
What you're looking at here are two totally different ways of thinking. On one side, you have Rolls-Royce focused on protecting its existing technology to keep its top spot in the market. On the other side, you have China, who, after getting shut out, went all in on building their own alternative to achieve long-term independence. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the actual performance of China's new engine, because these numbers, they're pretty incredible. Compared to the big established engines, it's reportedly more fuel efficient and way quieter. But check out these last two lines. Its maintenance cycle is 20% shorter, and here's the kicker, it costs about half as much to make.
I mean, that's a total game changer.
So, what does the money situation look like? Well, it's also a tale of two very different stories. By 2025, Rolls-Royce has made an impressive comeback, posting huge profits, mostly because Western air travel bounced back. But that profit is sitting next to this other bar, China's massive, state-funded investment in their own engine tech, a long-term bet that Rolls-Royce is now completely cut out of.
So let's zoom out. What does this one story, this one standoff, really mean for the bigger picture? Because this goes way beyond just a single engine deal or one company.
What we've really been talking about here is a perfect example of this huge global trend called technological sovereignty. It's this idea that to be truly secure, nations feel they need to control their own critical technologies, even if that means breaking away from the global supply chains we've relied on for decades.
So when you boil it all down, what are the big lessons here? Well, first off, the old guard, the big Western monopolies, they're not just competing with other companies anymore. They're up against the ambition of entire countries. Second, trying to block another country from getting your tech can seriously backfire and actually speed up their own innovation. And finally, this is a real cautionary tale. Grabbing short-term profits might feel good now, but it could cost you access to the world's biggest markets down the road.
And that really leaves us with one huge, kind of unsettling question. This whole story suggests we're moving away from that era of global cooperation we've gotten used to. So as this race for tech dominance gets more intense, you have to wonder, are we entering a new age where, when it comes to technology, it's every nation for itself?